If you worry a lot about having insomnia, then today I'm going to give you 6 reasons why you should not worry if you have insomnia. So, worry or anxiety around your sleep when you have insomnia is totally normal. Everybody has what are called negative sleep thoughts and a lot of anxiety around their sleep when they have insomnia. And it makes sense. You're not sleeping well. You're actually not sleeping well. It's not just your imagination. And there's a lot of concern around that. But what happens is many times that worry and that anxiety is overblown. It's what's called catastrophizing because we don't really understand what's going on in our bodies, and we hear all kinds of stuff in the media or on the internet that tells us, there's like alarms going off if you're not sleeping, and there's all kinds of dangers. And that just feeds into that insomnia cycle that I talk a lot about, where you're just, all these worries are related to sleep. And then there's all this pressure for you to be able to sleep or sleep well or get a certain number of hours. Otherwise, it's going to be a disaster. And that just creates a lot of anxiety. So what I wanted to do was just to try to shift or calm that worry a little bit. This won't necessarily completely get rid of your anxiety, because to do that, you really need to actually start improving your sleep and your insomnia. But this should help give you some ammunition and some reasons to start shifting your beliefs. So reason number one, it will not destroy your health. So there's a lot in the media now, and there's even a recent book that was written, a very popular book that just talked about all the health effects of not sleeping well and all these diseases you could get because of lack of sleep. So I'm going to give you a couple of pieces to think about here. First of all, sleep science, which is the study of sleep and why we sleep and things like that, is a brand new science. I mean, it's been around maybe 100 years, probably less than that, as a science that just started developing. And that's a very new science. And there is a lot that sleep scientists don't know, because there's been a good amount of research, but there's so much they don't know. And there's a lot of conflicting theories. And one scientist thinks one thing and one scientist thinks something else. So you cannot trust what one scientist says about sleep and insomnia and your health. That's number one, to keep that in mind, is you have to take that information with a grain of salt. There's a difference between fact and theory, or even correlation. And you need to be careful about what you accept as true when you're reading stuff online or you're reading books about insomnia. And generally, it's best to stay away from researching this online, because it usually just makes your anxiety and fear go up. It doesn't really help very much. The other thing I'll say here is a couple other things. Number one, I have seen clients with insomnia that have had it their whole life, 30 years or more, they've had insomnia, and they're still functioning. And some of them have no major health problems. I mean, some of them do because they're in their 60s or 70s, but is that just from the sleep? Because a lot of people in their 60s or 70s who don't have insomnia have health problems that are not coming from just their sleep. But I've seen people in their 60s or younger or older that have had insomnia for 30 years or more, and they don't have any major health issues. Now, you would think if a person wasn't sleeping well for 30 years or more, if this science was true, they would have all kinds of health issues and diseases, and maybe they wouldn't even still be alive, and yet they are. And in fact, some of these people can be outside of their sleep, fairly healthy if they have a good diet, if they're exercising, because sleep is critically important for our health. Don't get me wrong, but it's not the only factor that affects health. Obviously, there's diet, there's exercise, there's stress, things like that. So that's another piece. So the third thing I would say is, if you think about the way human beings evolved, we lived and evolved in nature. We're talking in, the forests or in raw nature for most of our existence, up till maybe a couple hundred years ago, when, we had modern technology and houses and air conditioning and all that kind of stuff. We were living in nature. We were foraging for food. We were in danger of wild animals and things like that attacking us. And so think about that. Do you think we were always sleeping 8 hours a night, every night, really well, sleeping out in nature? Definitely not, because sometimes you had to hunt at night, or there were predators and you couldn't relax, you couldn't sleep. There were noises. If you ever gone camping, it's not always the most peaceful thing. Even when you got a nice tent, or a sleeping bag, it still can be difficult to sleep because of the different sounds. Because of that, and because we lived that way for, millions of years as we evolved, we were very adaptive. Our bodies are super resilient. Human beings, the reason why we've survived, as long as we have, and why our age expectancy has gone up over the years, is because we've built up resilience to things that get in the way of us having an optimal situation for our sleep or our eating and things like that. It doesn't have to be perfect, because we had to be adaptive when we had to be up at night or to hunt or whatever that is. And we did that over many, many years. And therefore, we're much more resilient. We can handle a lack of sleep way more than you might think. And therefore, our bodies have built up, an ability to handle that, even when we're not sleeping over a period of time with insomnia. Reason number 2, you should not worry if you have insomnia, is you can still function. Now, can you function as well as when you're sleeping well? Definitely not. You're not functioning optimally. You're not going to feel great. You're going to feel out of it. But this also could be affected by if you're taking medication and other factors outside of just the lack of sleep. But you can still function, and probably a lot of people watching this, even though you have insomnia and you may only be getting a few hours of sleep a night, you notice that during the day you can still do stuff. You still have energy and you can still accomplish some things. You're not completely incapacitated. So there's a few things to keep in mind here. First of all, there's something called core sleep. Core sleep is where you're getting around 5.5 hours of sleep per night, give or take. It's not exactly, because it's different for each person, but it's around 5.5 hours. Within 5.5 hours, and this can be broken up. So if you sleep and you wake up several times in the night and it takes you time to get back to sleep, but the total amount of time that you end up sleeping is around 5.5 hours, you will get 100% of your deep sleep, because you get that in the first half of the night, and you'll get 50% of your REM sleep or your dream sleep, plus quite a bit of your light sleep. So you're getting a decent amount of recovery even within that time frame, where then you can function. And that's why many times people can function even when they have insomnia and they're averaging 5.5 hours of sleep per night. Now, some of you may not be getting 5.5 hours, right? You're watching, you're like, well, I'm not getting 5.5 hours. I'm getting 3 hours, or I'm not getting any sleep at all over some periods of time. Still, you're getting some sleep, and you're still getting some deep sleep. Even if you're only getting a couple hours of sleep, you're getting some of that. So you're getting some recovery, and that is why you can still function the next day and you can do stuff. But just to kind of start to shift that belief that, the belief is like, well, if I don't get all my sleep, 7 hours, 8 hours of perfect sleep, I can't function. That is just not true. And that's going to actually affect how you feel the next day by just your belief around what you're able to do. A couple other examples is, think about doctors in residency. They deliberately don't sleep for like 3 days on straight because they're on call and they're performing surgeries sometimes. They're not sleeping very well, and yet they can still function. Astronauts many times don't sleep a lot because they have to, run the spaceship. They can't just get 8 hours of sleep every night. And this is true of transatlantic sailors and things like that as well. And then one just short story from my own experience, when I had insomnia, I had some nights where I slept not at all, not zero amount of sleep. And one night in particular, I had 12 therapy clients the next day in a physical office, or I had to drive to the office, do 12 therapy clients sessions in a row, and I had zero sleep. And yes, I did not feel my best, and it was challenging to get through it, but I was able to do it. And that's a lot of clients. It's actually too many clients for a therapist to see in one day, but I was able to do it, and that helped my confidence a lot in terms of shifting that belief and realizing even if I don't sleep at all, I can still function. I can still get through the day. And then, of course, I have a lot more pressure built up for the next night, where I'm much more likely to get better sleep. Reason number 3, you should not worry if you have insomnia, is there's nothing wrong with you. So one of the major worries with insomnia is there's something wrong with me. I've lost my ability to sleep. There's something that's off in my system. And the fact is, there's nothing wrong with you. Sure, there's something wrong with your sleep, but it's because of the way you're going about your sleep and the way you're thinking about your sleep. I've talked about this in depth in other videos on what actually creates insomnia is our own behaviors and our own thoughts, and not some disease or disorder that's sort of attacking you internally, like a medical disease or something. Sure, once you have insomnia, it is definitely affecting you on a physical chemical or physiological level because you're not sleeping and your sleep system is shifted. But it's us that causes that problem through our behaviors around our sleep and the way that we're thinking about it. That's not like something is broken in you. You do not lose your ability to sleep, just like you don't lose your ability to do other things that your body does automatically that's built into your system as a human being. That is a really key thing to shift, because sometimes people start doubting, I've lost my ability. It feels that way for sure. It feels like you can't sleep because you're trying and you're doing all these things that aren't really working, but that is just not true. Reason number 4 is it doesn't matter how long you've had insomnia, you can still overcome it. Sometimes people think, well, I've had insomnia for 5 years or 10 years or 30 years. This is just who I am. You know, I've had this so long, there's no way I'm going to be able to overcome it. You might even have tried a lot of different things at that point to get past it, and yet you're still dealing with it. The reason for that is not because you can't overcome it. It's not because you've had it for a long time. It doesn't matter how long you've had it, actually. It's just like any habit. If we don't shift a habit, and in this case, insomnia is kind of like a habit. It's a habit in terms of our behaviors around our sleep and the way we think about our sleep that is just turned into an automatic thing on our body because we've essentially trained our body to sleep in a certain way without us realizing we were doing that. And that can be untrained and that can be shifted. And I'm going to get to how you do that, but that is not true. It doesn't really matter how long you have had insomnia. You can still overcome it. And as I've said, I've seen many people that have had insomnia for decades and they're able to get past the insomnia. Okay, number 5, it doesn't matter how severe your insomnia is. So people have different levels of severity with insomnia, meaning that you could have insomnia where maybe you're averaging, 6 hours of sleep a night, and maybe that's been happening for a few months. That's still insomnia because 6 hours isn't optimal and you don't want to be having difficulty sleeping. But some people have insomnia where they're averaging 3 hours a night, or some nights they're not sleeping, and this has been going on for years. And so it's more severe in terms of the intensity of the insomnia. So it's on a spectrum. Insomnia can be on a spectrum. It can be more severe, it can be more moderate, it can be more mild, but it doesn't matter how severe it is in terms of overcoming it. It doesn't matter if you are in that more severe range, you can still overcome the insomnia and be able to get past it through the last thing that I'm going to say, which is number 6. The sixth reason why you shouldn't worry about having insomnia is there is a cure. There is a cure that will get rid of the insomnia, where you can keep it away for the rest of your life and have some control over that. And that is called CBTI, or cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Okay, this is something that I talk a lot about on this channel because it's the solution. To me, it's the only long-term solution that's actually going to solve the root problem of insomnia. It's the gold standard treatment for insomnia, and it is highly effective. And again, it doesn't matter how long you've had insomnia, how severe it is, what kind of insomnia you have, whether you're taking medication or not. It doesn't matter. CBTI still works, and actually it was developed for chronic insomnia, which is insomnia people have had for 3 months or longer. So that is the main reason why you shouldn't worry. Just to finish on the strongest one is you can solve the problem if that's something you want to do. And I'll put a link to other videos I have that goes into CBTI, that the treatment or the process for overcoming insomnia in a little more detail, so you can get an idea of what that is. You want to make sure that if you've tried this, that you've actually done CBTI. But that's the main reason why you shouldn't worry, is that you can solve this problem and you don't have to live with this for the rest of your life. Okay. So again, to go through the 6 reasons why you shouldn't worry if you have insomnia. Number 1, it won't destroy your health. Number 2, you can still function. Number 3, there's nothing wrong with you. Number 4, it doesn't matter how long you've had it. Number 5, it doesn't matter how severe it is. And number 6, you can cure it. You can overcome the insomnia through cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia. Okay. So I hope this video was helpful. If it was, just press the like button so I know. And if you have other worries that I didn't address here, people have other kinds of worries with insomnia, then post them in the comments below. And if you have any other questions about insomnia, you can post those questions in the comments. And I do Q&A videos every once in a while where I'll answer those questions in a video just for you. All right. Hope you have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.